بسم الله الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and bless your families and make us among those who will earn the reward for Laylatul Qadr ya Rabbil Alameen. Tonight is the 27th night of Ramadan and a hopeful night to be one of those nights, possibly Laylatul Qadr. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again make us among those who will win the reward for worshipping a night that is better than 1,000 months. Ya Rabbil Alameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all for being with us here tonight. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We have our guest for this evening is my beloved brother, Sheikh and also colleague, the Dean of Academics of Al-Maghrib Institute, Sheikh Suleiman Hani. Hafidahullah, all the way from Michigan, mashallah. And Sheikh Suleiman, tabarakallah, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, finished his master's degree in Islamic studies from Harvard University. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessing and a barakah for you in the dunya and in the akhirah. Rabbil Alameen. Shaykhna, hayakum Allah, and welcome to this program, to the Heart Softeners. Ahla wa sahlan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, alhamdulillah, I'm honored, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to this discussion. I think there's a lot to say and unpack on this beautiful topic, and tonight is a great night for that, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Absolutely, subhanAllah. So for the brothers and sisters who are watching with us right now on Reliance Islamic Center YouTube channel or Reliance Islamic Center Facebook page and my personal Facebook page, Yaser Birjas, I want to remind you that you can, inshallah ta'ala, start writing your questions as we continue starting with the topic. And then, inshallah, within the next 20 or so minutes, we will start taking your questions in Binillahi Azza wa Jal. Our topic for this evening is amazing, and I believe, like I said, Sheikh, perfect for this night, subhanAllah. It's At-Tawakkul. Tawakkul ala Allah Azza wa Jal. To put, this trust and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a night like this, when everybody wants to completely, drop their loads all the way from their shoulders, off their shoulders, their backs, and in this night, just to kind of put everything down there and just submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, Ya Rabb, I trust your judgment. Whatever you decreed for me, Ya Allah, this is it. So, Laylatul Qadr, obviously, the reason was called Laylatul Qadr because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يُفْرَقُ فِيهَا كُلُّ أَمْرٍ حَكِيمٍ. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to send down every command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will decree for the next year in this night. So, our hope that we trust Allah's judgment and have our tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people, they're going to ask right now, tawakkul. I heard that word many times. I know it's very important, but what is it exactly? What does it mean?
Barakallahu feekum. In short, there's so many beautiful commentaries trying to define tawakkul in all of its facets. But in short, tawakkul is to fully rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It begins as an internal state to entrust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all of a person's affairs. It is the complete, sincere reliance, dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring about good and to drive away evil from a person in this life and in the next life. And so it includes many different facets of existence. One of the scholars, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said tawakkul is half of the religion. The other half is inaba, which is to turn to Allah in all of our affairs and in repentance as well. Tawakkul is encompassed by the central ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the main message of the Quran. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So it is to fully trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of you in the best manner possible according to His wisdom, His knowledge, His mercy, His love, and so on and so forth.
No. SubhanAllah, so if it's that important, how often tawakkul was mentioned in the Quran anyway? Is it mentioned very frequently or little?
One of the scholars, I believe it's also Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said it's mentioned in 42 different places in the Quran in different forms. And most of these forms, if not all of these forms, are to fully entrust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our affairs. 42 occasions throughout the Quran as a constant reminder. And this helps us, and I wanted to actually start with this, it helps us psychologically and religiously, spiritually. And a lot of people underestimate how important tawakkul is as a psychological revolution. It's one of the most important traits for the human being to really get through this life, to cope with this life, to get through the purpose of this life, and to make it to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Jannah by His will.
So what is the essence of tawakkul then? If this is that important, obviously, I can see that from what you're saying, subhanAllah, because one of the biggest heart diseases we have in our time, And one of the biggest problems we have in our society is when people try to take control of everything. And they wanna master everything in their hands. They don't want to depend on anybody, especially in culture like our culture, what is self-promoting culture, and it's all about myself, and it's all about self-independence and so on. So that kind of radical individualism in this society is causing a lot of people to start falling apart, unfortunately, especially when they don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they try to take things in their own hands. So in that sense, what is really the essence of tawakkul that can bring that peace and tranquility to people's lives?
I think in short, it would be knowing who we really are and knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of his names, his attributes, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who can truly dispose of our affairs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are always in need of him, whether or not we're under the illusion that we are independent or we're getting through things or accomplishing things. We always need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Part of it is also knowing our position in terms of humility. So we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that all of our affairs cannot be accomplished, no matter how much we have of intellect or money or power or anything like this. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not permit for it to manifest or occur. The essence of it is definitely a state of the heart, a state of knowing one's reality, knowing who we are before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that every single creature in this universe, everything in this universe, in terms of its provisions, in terms of its success, its favors, its blessings, everything that is good or evil, anything that can affect it in any way at all, goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is knowing the reality of existence, knowing who Allah is and knowing ourselves, and then relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think this can be summarized with Allahu khaliqu kulli shay wa huwa ala kulli shay'in wakil. Allah is the creator of all things, and he is the disposer of all things as well.
So it's more like a shortcut to peace of mind, right? It's just when you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't worry about the outcome. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the disposer of all affairs. And whatever that comes out of it, I'm sure that he has hikmah and wisdom behind it, right? So when it comes to tawakkul, does it happen before the amal or after the amal? How do I work with the tawakkul?
Excellent. So the nicest, I think, comprehensive explanation I've seen of it, and this is what I've always felt as well in reading about it, is that tawakkul begins as an internal state. So it's the way that we see the world, understand who we are, understand our need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, and that nothing can manifest without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it begins as an internal state in which everything has to be, in a way, transferred over. فَوَّضْتُ أَمْرِي إِلَيْكَ. Oh Allah, I'm handing over my affairs to you.
It's the state of the heart, I understand, right?
It's a state of the heart in the beginning, and then it is to do the actions as well. Some scholars said, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah focused on the internal state. Others wanted to add more to the definition, so they said it's also the efforts you put in to understand that there are causes. So you take basically you take all means, al-asbab, in order to accomplish something while still trusting in Allah. And then the third, which I really loved, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said, to basically go for the fruit of tawakkul, which is to be content with the outcome after the fact. So tawakkul is before, during, and after. It's a way of life. It's everything.
So it's not sufficient just to say it by tongue, right? Like a lot of people, you hear them say tawakkaltu ala Allah, but then whatever comes out of what they've done, they come, fretting and upset and whining and complaining. So how is that working with tawakkul?
I think a good example or analogy might be somebody studying for a university exam. So they start the semester and they say, I put my trust in Allah, tawakkaltu ala Allah. And then they don't study. They look at the requirements and they say, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to have trust in Allah that I'll pass. I'm not going to work, but I have trust in Allah that somehow the money will come to me. I'm not going to do anything at all to protect myself, but somehow I will assume that everything will be okay. And then they're surprised with the outcome. So tawakkul is also to take every mean possible. And I think the precedence for this goes back to the time of the Sahaba and even the Prophet ﷺ, with the Bedouin man, for example, who didn't tie his camel. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, tie your camel, أَعْقِلْهَا وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. And I give usually the example of a car. You take a nice car, a brand new car, into an area that's known to have like car thefts. And you leave the car door open, unlock, the car is running, let's say a brand new Ferrari in the middle of anywhere, place X. and your friend is with you, and they ask, why don't you lock your car? What's going on? And you say, Tawakkaltu ala Allah. I have trust in Allah. Where's your trust in Allah? Why are you doubting that Allah can protect this car, even if all the enemies came to steal it? And so you leave your car running, you leave the keys in the car, the door is open. You're basically asking for it. So it's a misunderstanding of tawakkul, as some travelers to Hajj also had in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, where they wouldn't work for anything and they would start to beg, and they would say, basically, we have our trust in Allah. And they were told, you need to work for it. You need to put in the effort. You need to do your part or your best, and then leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
SubhanAllah. So this, Sheikh, this is something very understandable, obviously. When someone is mutawakkil, which means they're just kind of like claiming to have tawakkul and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in essence, they're not making the effort, right? But what about those who put the effort? Those who put the effort and they said, I trusted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but look what I got. So they're not pleased with the outcome. How is that working also with the subject of tawakkul here?
Barakallahu feekum. A big part of this is that the mentality of tawakkul, because it requires us to first, or to fully understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in terms of what we can possibly know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also al-Hakim. So when you say, I trust in Allah, I trust that whatever I have in my mind of this plan will manifest in the way that is best in accordance with Allah's knowledge, not my knowledge, Allah's wisdom, not my wisdom. So I might have put my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's say I did market research, I launched a business, I made dua, I did everything I was supposed to do, and the business failed. In that case, tawakkul is still at play here, where I'm trusting that the outcome, although I don't like it, it might be better for me. وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. You might hate something, but it's actually good for you. And in the end, who really knows? Who can see behind the scenes? Who has knowledge of all things? وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows, and we really don't know anything. We have such limited sight and limited wisdom, subhanAllah. So sometimes we interpret things as good or evil, and it's usually because we want something or desire something or hate something based on our interpretation of what really is good for us or is not. Allah.
Well, that's beautiful, but subhanAllah, some people might take the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا. Says, look, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying here in this hadith that if you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you truly have your trust and reliance on Allah azza wa jal, He will provide for you like He would do to the birds. In the morning, early in the morning, they leave empty stomach, and at the end of the day, they come with full stomach. So there you go. Allah provides subhanahu wa ta'ala like this. So why do I have to make the effort? What do we say to them?
Excellent. The bird, number one, is actually putting in effort. It's not sitting around waiting for other birds. The bird is not panicking. The bird is not, just crying. The bird is going, and this is a bird, subhanAllah,
going out to make the effort and put the trust in Allah subhanahu. Allah provide, right?
And that's full conviction, and that's from a bird, subhanAllah. Full conviction that its creator will provide for it. And the human being at a greater level, intellectual capacity, and all that we have, and Allah honored us, above most of the creation. We should also put our full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, full trust that as Allah promised something good will happen, and you had put your trust in Him and you made dua for it, it will happen in the way that Allah knows is best for you. So it might be that the way that it happens is exactly as you expected. It might be that this was not the best way for you, so some other detour took place, and Allah gave us something even better. And I think we all can attest, or maybe most people can think of an example in life in which we all planned for something and it didn't go our way. And at first we might not understand why, we don't fully maybe even process it. And then sometime down the road, a month, a year, 10 years sometimes, a person finally realizes that this thing was actually better for them. And that's the thing, is realizing it in hindsight is easy. Trusting in Allah during the process is part of tawakkul, that full conviction that I know I don't like this result, but there must be something good in it for me, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not give me something that is bad for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not treat us with any kind of dhulm, any kind of oppression. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. And one of the issues that comes, or one of the facets of this discussion that I think a lot of people get confused with, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh, is their feeling of trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes gets also confused with the will of Allah and the love of Allah. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused or allowed something to happen to me, a trial or a test, and it's a difficult one, the assumption is Allah does not love me, therefore I must not have had tawakkul. And there should, I think, always be this emphasis when we remind people that there's a distinction between Allah's permitting of something to occur and Allah's love of something. So if something happens to you and you're generally trying to be righteous and you're trying to be a good person, you put your trust in Allah, always assume that this thing is actually good for you. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does permit certain things to occur that He does not love for a greater wisdom. So there's something greater that will outweigh it. For example, Allah does not love for people to oppress or to kill or to commit shirk. وَلَا يَرْضَى لِعِبَادِهِ الْكُفْرِ. And yet He permits it for a greater wisdom. So as we go through these trials and tribulations and we put our trust in Allah through different moments, sometimes we're tested with something for a much greater reward, much greater benefit, much greater wisdom. And we have to trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love for us is still there. It's still at play.
So obviously we have a choice in what we do, right? So those who chose to have disbelief and kufr, those who have the choice of course to have faith and iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah allows it, but you need to make the effort to always do the right thing, inshallah. Which brings us to the question right now, Sheikh. When it comes to the asbab, the means by which we achieve things, right? When we say tawakkul, I need to have reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trust in Allah azza wa jal. But how much faith, let me put it this way, should I put in my preparation, in my determination to do things, or even going through certain plans? That requires probably a lot of energy, effort, investment, time, and this and that and so on. So how much faith a person should put into the effort versus, putting trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how important it is to even have preparation for it?
Barakallahu feekum. I would say with both facets of tawakkul, put in your all. Do your best and leave the rest to Allah. The same way any one of us, especially students who try to aim, let's say, for 100%, not like an A, but 100% in every class. They're not going to say, I just have my trust in Allah, I'm only going to prepare a little for this 100%. They know that it will require a little more effort to really maintain that perfect score, for example. So just as we take this analogy and apply it to everything else in life, do your best in everything, prepare for everything properly, put everything forth. And of course, it has to be simultaneous to our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm doing everything that I possibly can. I'm keeping my trust in Allah, knowing that there are people around the world who put in that same effort you put in, and Allah did not permit for them to achieve something that you achieved. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom is always at play. His knowledge is always at play. You prepare for something, you do your best, you keep your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking good of Allah. And when we think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am as my slaves think good of me. And if we're thinking optimistically and we're assuming good of Allah and we're putting in all our effort and we're making a lot of dua with full conviction that the dua is accepted, that we're trusting in Allah, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, be content and have conviction in the process, in the journey, regardless of the outcome. It's always best for us, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is planning better for all of us, especially those who are seeking His rahmah, people of ihsan, الَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً, people who do good, people who are encompassed with Allah's rahmah because of their righteous actions. إِنَّ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Always have the assumption that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is planning for you better than you're planning for yourself, and Allah is taking care of you better than you're taking care of yourself, beyond our imagination. But we can't see behind the scenes. And so all of this goes back to tawakkul, which is a part of our iman.
So when it comes to tawakkul, basically to preparation, obviously, we prepare in all aspects. We prepare, with the little things and the big things. If it's a matter of spiritual thing, I have to prepare it spiritually. If it's a matter of business, a matter of family matters, I need to prepare for everything. Like a lot of people these days, they just misunderstand the meaning of tawakkul. And frankly, to be honest with you, a lot of people, they only think of tawakkul when they're in troubles. Like when they want to, let's say, get married, and now they're just kind of like confused. I don't know what to do. I don't want to make my decision. You know what? I'll just trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah, go for it. And when things go south, they go back and say, Ya Rab, I did my tawakkul. Some other people, they go business venture, like you said, for instance, and they say, and then they put their tawakkul when they think that they need that. So you mentioned earlier, when it comes to tawakkul, it's before, within, and after. So it's more of like a lifestyle, right? So those people who only think of tawakkul in a negative way, how can we fix that and make them think, hey, listen, it's not just when you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tawakkul on Allah azza wa jal. You have to understand you need Allah all the time. That's why you have to tawakkul all the time, right? So how do we do that?
Excellent. I would say, there are a number of things. The first is for people to really recognize their need for tawakkul as a way of life, and not only in times of difficulty. And that can, I guess, apply to many things like dua. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
make dua until they're going through hardship. And then when Allah
Yes.
relieves them of their hardship, they go back to what they used to do before. And this is
Mhm.
mentioned throughout the Quran. It's the same as being grateful to Allah, seeking forgiveness from Allah. Sometimes people only turn to Allah when they think they're in need of Him. But tawakkul is to know that you're always in need of Him. Tawakkul is to recognize.
So how can I maintain that? Like someone is asking already, actually, how do we maintain tawakkul all the time? Yeah, this is a definitely it's a very important subject right now. I want to do this. I don't want to stop, putting trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I'm a human being after all, right? So how do I keep my tawakkul constant in my life on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
The first I would say is to recognize its place in our reality. Min a'zam al-wajibat, Ibn al-Qayyim says, one of the most important obligations. It's half of the
Mm,
religion. So first is to know, the same with salah, with anything else, maintaining it, is to know its value, to know its significance, to study it, to hear about it, to read articles about it. The second
mm,
is to have frequent doses of reminders. So the one who's always reading the Quran, the one who's listening to lectures and reciting Quran and making dhikr and dua, they're going to be reminded of tawakkul in so many different ways if they're practicing these daily rituals and ways of life. So in the Quran, you have multiple places in which tawakkul is mentioned, and you have stories of the righteous who also had to put their trust in Allah. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, or the end of Surah At-Tawbah. فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. So you have the Quran, you have reading, you have reminders. وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين. Remind, for the reminders benefit the believers. And then the third I would say is practicing the sunan of dua in all occasions or on all occasions. So the one who frequently follows the sunan, for example, before going to sleep, making the dua when you wake up, when you leave the house, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, I put my trust in Allah. The one who's always saying this, because this is a way of life, they're going to be reminded of it naturally, so they will be more likely to maintain it. Going to sleep, Allahumma aslamtu nafsi ilayk, oh Allah, I submit myself to you. وَوَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِي إِلَيْكَ, I turn myself to you. وَفَوَّضْتُ أَمْرِي إِلَيْكَ, I hand over my affairs to you. The one who prays witr prayer, and let's say they're doing one of the dua, Allahumma laka aslamna wa bika amanna wa alayka tawakkalna, we put our trust in
mm,
you. أذكار الصباح والمساء حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. And then also practicing with things that they consider minor. So if someone thinks I have full control over my studies, like this is not something I'll usually make dua for because it's so easy for me, or work, or anything, tying my shoes.
mm,
Practicing with smaller things, making dua, and just taking a few moments to reflect, I'm in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this moment, even if I think I'm in control, helps us, wallahu alam, to maintain that throughout the day and night. And the fifth, I would say, is maybe the most obvious, for the one who's always reciting, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Reflect on it. Don't just fly through it. How can we
mm,
fly through an ayah that defines our worldview, our
mm,
mentality, our perspective? Tawakkul is, and also to learn its benefits, tawakkul is something that can completely shift one's perspective on the world. And psychologically, one of the most helpful traits to have. So higher levels of tawakkul means lower levels of fear of worldly things, or fear of lack of control for the future, or uncertainty, or not knowing what's going to happen. So trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even according to secular research, trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trusting in God, is something that helps people with regards to maintaining their happiness and feeling like there is a level of dependency on God. And I know that I need God no matter what the situation is. Wallahu a'lam.
SubhanAllah. It's so beautiful. Like what, as you were speaking about it, I'm thinking, SubhanAllah, that our deen gave us really a roadmap, gave us an entire infrastructure, right? I mean, your morning adhkar includes tawakkul. Your evening remembering of Allah includes tawakkul. When you come out of the house, when you get into the house, when you do whatever you do, you always have this reminder, alhamdulillah, and tawakkul. And the same thing, like I said, when you pray the 5 daily prayers, you remind yourself with that, nasta'in, idina sirat mustaqim. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. It's you that we worship, you that we seek help and assistance from. It's subhanallah, it's a constant reminder. So a person to have this quality of tawakkul and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not just something temporary, that's a lifestyle. Which means if someone wants to build that, they want to really create this as a natural thing to them. Some people, subhanAllah, they're compassionate, they're very naturally compassionate. Why? Because they've been so much practicing compassion until it became their second nature. And some people have this sense of tawakkul. Like sometimes you see some of these people, no matter what's going on in the world, And these people are just like, subhanAllah, level-headed, just kind of like very cool and very calm and unbelievable. That reminds me with Rasulullah sallallahu wasallam alayhi. Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they used to say, قال كان إذا حزن إذا اشتد الأمر فزعنا لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. When things get really tough and things get really, really hard, especially when in the battlefield even sometimes. When things get really hard, we go to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we find peace and tranquility. Because he's the man in the face of danger. He knows nothing happens except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Good, bad, whatever that is. You have this tawakkul, subhanAllah. And you also mentioned some of the reminders Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed for us in the Quran in form of stories, right? So one of the beautiful stories is the story of Maryam, the mother of Isa, and shaking the palm tree. That's an example of tawakkul. How is that? Can you, Shaykh, explain this to us?
Yeah, subhanallah. So the story of Maryam in short with regards to tawakkul, and there are a lot of comments on the story, because it could have been that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not command Maryam alayhi salam to do anything, to put in any effort. But she was commanded to shake the base of the palm tree, right? She had to put in effort even during like that test and that trial. There was a beautiful
I can imagine that this lady is barely, she's so exhausted. She just delivered a baby, and she's emotionally distressed because she's afraid what she's going to tell the family and the people when they meet with her. So physically she's exhausted, emotionally she's exhausted. She was just barely saying before that moment, she was saying, Ya laytani mittu qabla hada wa kuntu nasyan mansiya. I wish I was dead and never happened to me. So she's emotionally, subhanAllah, stressed out. Physically she's exhausted and tired. Still, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling her, grab the palm tree, shake it, it will bring down the nice juicy fruit of the palm tree. So no matter in what condition we are, we still need to do our part, right? And that's the meaning of putting trust. So put our part. There's another example in the Quran, Shaykh, which is Subhanallah bin Qayyim rahimahullah, brings as one of the wonders of tawakkul on Allah Azza. Like if you truly have to, so the example of Maryam is the example of having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're pursuing al-amal. Like you have to do something. So you trust Allah while doing something. But the example of Maryam, it's a whole different story. The example of the mother of Musa. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the mother of Musa, or about the mother of Musa, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى أُمِّ مُوسَى أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ, we inspired to the mother of Musa to nurse the child. فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ. When you become so scared for him, when you become so terrified for him, throw him in the water. Like just put him in the water. Now, it's weird. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says that usually when you tell a mother who's so afraid for her child to protect him, what would you tell her? Run away with him, hide him, do this, do that. But you tell this lady, hold him tight, nurse your child, keep him with you. When you become scared for him, put him in the water. What does that mean? When you can't do anything about him, then trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your child, put him on the surface of the water. And Allah told him, don't worry about him. إِنَّا رَدُّهُ إِلَيْكِ وَجَعَلُهُ مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. We're going to bring him back to you, and we can even make him a messenger. Good news for him. However, subhanAllah, no matter how much our heart is attached right now to trusting Allah's judgment, like I don't even know why Allah is asking me to throw him in the water. It's completely opposite to what you expect. But if Allah said, I'm going to need to do that, I will need to do that. Which is why the believer, if they truly believe this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they submit themselves. And they accept Allah's judgment in that regard. But then, as a human being still, Shaykh, here is something people, they keep asking. Okay, I want to have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I'm a human being. Sometimes I get exhausted, I get tired. So I have second thoughts. Are second thoughts okay? Is it haram? Is it wrong? Like in the story of the mother of Musa, even though she knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of her baby, what did she say when she put the baby on the surface of the water? She called his sister. She goes, Qussi. Go after him and check on him. I want you to see what is going to happen to him. SubhanAllah, Allah told her, don't worry, I'll bring him back to you. But she said to her daughter, go and check on him. So when the sister went check on her brother, the baby brother, and she found that her brother ended up in the den of the lion, in the den of the enemy that she was afraid of in the first place. The mother of Musa, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in karat latubdi bih. Like she almost out of course of panicking, she almost kind of disclosed the fact that said, my baby, bringing my baby back. But Allah says, لولا أن ربطنا على قلبها. Except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has confirmed that faith on her heart, And then the story continues, and of course, of حرمنا عليه المراضع. He wasn't unable to take any wet nurse until his sister, she said, I have a household, can help you with that. And then brought him back to his mom. This is one of the most amazing stories of tawakkul. But people, they think tawakkul is a magic wand. Like just put tawakkul, alhamdulillah, everything is going to be resolved. We're humans, right? Sometimes we get tired and we fluctuate. Is that possible? Does that break the essence of tawakkul?
Of course, our iman fluctuates, and with it, tawakkul will fluctuate. But the aim should always be that I want to have tawakkul that does not run out in times of difficulty or times of exhaustion. So, of course, our iman will fluctuate, our tawakkul will fluctuate, but only in accordance with how much we train this muscle. The more we develop this muscle to be strong in times of ease, in times of relative ease, where you think you might not be in need of Allah, the stronger it will be there for you in times of difficulty. إذا سألت فاسأل الله وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله. If you have to ask, ask of Allah. If you have to rely, rely upon Allah. So we develop the muscle so that when these occasions arise, may Allah protect all of us and relieve all of us, we want to be able to respond always with the silver lining and the optimistic lens of tawakkul, trusting in Allah and assuming good of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, I am as my slave thinks of me. أنا عند ظن عبدي بي. So if we're always practicing this in times of difficulty and ease, minor and moderate things, then inshallah it will develop the muscle and the iman that we need for more difficult things. Doses of reminders, studying the religion properly, making dua frequently, trusting in Allah constantly. All of these things will develop inshallah so that we reach the ideal state that we are looking for.
Inshallah, tabarak. Sheikh, I'm going to be inshallah taking questions right now from our viewers, brothers and sisters online. So for those brothers and sisters, you can submit your questions in the actually comment section, whether you're watching on VRIC live stream on YouTube or you're watching it on the VRIC Reliance Islamic Center Facebook page, or my personal Facebook page, or even actually Sheikh Suleiman Hani's personal page as well too. We will try to take as many questions as we can within the next, inshallah, the 25 minutes before we close the session. So I have many questions, mashallah, already actually trickling in on these different outlets here. Our crafty ummah is asking, what is a good way to teach tawakkul to children, like at their level of understanding? And I'm assuming that she's asking here about little ones. How can we teach our kids tawakkul?
I think depending on their age, in accordance with what they can possibly comprehend. So the same way we can teach them, if they're at that age, we can teach them about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. We teach them that we depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So teaching them, for example, why we make dua, why we ask ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim when we are already praying. We're asking Allah to keep us firm, and this is a type of tawakkul. Many times people think,
because they already know Surah Al-Fatiha and they recite that frequently. It's a good start, right?
Absolutely, Sheikh. And oftentimes, I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking that tawakkul is only in worldly matters. Tawakkul is also for ibadah, for worship, for maintaining our faith, for entering into Jannah. That's also part of tawakkul. So I think that's something that, depending on the child's age, can go into their comprehension of Allah.
Isn't that what the Prophet ﷺ did with his cousin Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh? When he told him, Ya ghulam, ihfadillah yahfadk, ihfadillah tajid tujahak. He was a young boy. You could say he was a tween, maybe or maybe a young teenager. And the Prophet ﷺ speaking to him in a way, and that's the thing. Sometimes we really undervalue and underestimate our children. So we always talk to them as babies, even though they became, mashallah, grown up, men. But in this young age, the Prophet ﷺ was helping this young man to mature in his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, telling him, Ya ghulam, even though he says, my dear young boy, ihfadillah yahfadk, you preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life, in your mind, in your thoughts, and Allah will preserve you. Ihfadillah tajid tujahak. If you preserve Allah in your life, and observe Allah subhanahu all your affairs, Allah will be there for you when you need Him. Subhanahu, He's teaching him. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ وَإِذَا استعنت فاستعن بالله. When you ask Allah. When you seek help and assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a beautiful example. That Allah subhanahu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was teaching children as well too. And again, we need to help our kids mature in their relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. Not just always take them as little kids. They're not going to comprehend that. They're not going to understand this. We just do that. That remind me also of the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was when he saw his grandson Al-Hasan picking up a date from the masjid. So it seems that it was actually from mal al-sadaqa, which means charity or zakah. And the family of the Prophet ﷺ doesn't eat from the charity. So you talk about a young boy just to give people perspective, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Al-Hassan was barely actually 8, 9 years old, probably. So sometime before that, the Prophet ﷺ saw him picking up a date, and the Prophet ﷺ grabbed his hand and he says, actually, he put it in his mouth, as a matter of fact. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told him, Kach, kach, spit it out, spit it out. And then he told him, ألا تعلم أن آل محمد لا نأكل من مال الصدقة. Don't you understand? We're the family of Muhammad. We don't eat charity. We don't eat zakah. I mean, that's a 6, 7 years old child. How do you understand that conversation? It's about maturity. You teach them, you speak to them as if they understand it, because I hope, inshallah ta'ala, that builds in them, a sense of confidence that there's a purpose behind it, even though they might not comprehend it in this moment, but there must be a reason for that. So that's a beautiful, alhamdulillah, a reminder. Jazakallah khair, Shaykhna. Another question coming here. Yes, please.
I was going to add one more thing to that. I think also really, it might seem very simple, but really straightforward, especially for even younger children than that age, is the practice of saying Bismillah before doing anything. Teaching them, why do we say Bismillah? The understanding of Bismillah. I'm starting in the name of Allah, so I'm trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking for His blessings. So some of these practices that we teach our children, and as you said, we shouldn't underestimate their intellectual capacity. Anything that is in accordance with the natural fitrah is easy to understand, even for youngsters, but perhaps in their own language or in their own way. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, barakallah fiik. So Amy is asking, she said, for all these heart softeners lectures we've been talking about, knowledge was mentioned a lot. Like, you need knowledge, you need reading, learning. So she's asking, for non-Arabic speakers, where do we start? I mean, maybe a topic for after Ramadan, inshallah, she's suggesting about what to read, how to understand things, and so on. Any suggestion for someone who is want to learn about the subject in English or any other language?
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah for the blessing of technology in our times, and the blessing of resources, and the blessing of the translation of so many important foundational topics in our religion. I would say maybe the study of the 40 ahadith of An-Nawawi, rahimahullah, in English with commentary. It's available online for everyone. There's so many series and articles and websites on this topic, as well as Riyadus Salihin, and English tafsir as well would help with this, wallah alam, as a starting point.
So there's so many books, alhamdulillah, available right now. Actually, as a matter of fact, the book that we're talking about, Madarij al-Salikin, is already being translated into English language, which is a gem by itself, subhanAllah. It's going to be out very soon, by the end of this month, inshallah. And I think the translation title is The Ranks of the Divine Seekers by Dr. Omer Anjum. You can check it out. It's actually pre-ordered on Amazon if you want to do that, inshallah. That's one of the most amazing books on the subject of heart softeners. Madarij al-Salikin by Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. Sheikh, someone is asking here in regards to tawakkul, obviously. Basically, I believe it's, I'm checking out here. Yeah, Bosanska is asking, saying, is it okay to still be sad with the outcome of the situation despite trusting and wholeheartedly accepting Allah's decision and judgment? Is that even possible?
It's possible to experience sadness and have contentment with Allah's decree. An example of this is the Prophet ﷺ crying at the death of Hamza radiallahu anh. The Prophet ﷺ is crying out of mercy and sadness, but of course, Rasulullah ﷺ is content with the decree of Allah. And sometimes those two get conflated. But also on that note, Rila.
Also that was the example of Yaqub, right? Yaqub alayhi salam. I disclose my grief and my sorrow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though from that dream he knew there would be something good about it for Yusuf alayhi salam. But he's a human being after all. He lost his sight crying for his children, right? So it doesn't defy tawakkul at all?
No, that doesn't contradict tawakkul. As long as our perspective, in terms of sadness, there's sadness over loss of loved ones and so on and so forth. But as long as we're content with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we know this happened for a reason, we know this is inevitable, we know that this is decreed and so on and so forth, and that we think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it does not negate the fact that we're humans and we can be sad as well. But so the more, of course, no.
So that's in regards to being sad. So it's okay to be sad because we're human beings after all, right? But there's another question coming from Osama, is asking, saying, okay, so alhamdulillah, I do believe in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things happen for a reason, I understand that. But sometimes after the fact, we can resent our decision or decision made by our family members for us. So resentment, right? It's not just sadness right now. So is resentment right now is going to, contradict with tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if so, how can we overcome these thoughts?
Depending on what the situation was, I mean, the context really matters. But generally speaking, the first reaction for the believer in terms of the one who's reaching a high level of tawakkul is قدر الله ما شاء فعل. The first
Mm.
reaction is Alhamdulillah. The first reaction is Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. All of these are the reactions of the believer. That's the same hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is telling us what a strong believer, so we're aiming for strength. And he also instructs us, Wasta'in billah wa la ta'jaz. Put your trust in Allah and don't become incapacitated or lazy or lose hope or give up. So when something happens, you say Qaddar Allah ma sha'a fa'al. We utilize the past to learn lessons, but we don't live in the past. So think about the past. If you must, for example, someone made a mistake and they want to readjust moving forward, optimistically but strategically moving forward. I don't want to make this mistake again, whether it's in their business, in their studies, with family. And the second is with regards to a sin. So a person's reflecting on a mistake that they made that was also sinful. They transgressed the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So reflecting on the past then is only to have remorse so that it's not repeated in the future. But in terms of accepting it, that it happened, it occurred, we can't change the past. رفعت الأقلام, the pens have been lifted, وجفت الصحف, the scrolls have dried. So what has happened has happened. Now you have to reflect on, what am I going to do moving forward? We cannot control what happens to us, what's past. We can control how we will respond to it, how we'll move forward. Allahu Alam.
Allah, that's some people are still actually asking about, how to build it, how to build tawakkul. I mean, they say, I'm still struggling with it, and I'm trying my best. So how to start even with tawakkul, or how to build tawakkul? What do we tell these brothers and sisters?
Excellent. First, I would say learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names and His attributes, and specifically Al-Wakil. And you can study this in 1 moment, 2 moments, inshallah. Al-Wakil.
And
Al-Wakil.
what's the significance of that? Yeah.
You're taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your disposer of affairs. When you know who Allah is, then you have nothing to worry about. Here's an analogy, minor analogy. Someone extremely wealthy comes in, let's say a trillionaire walks in and says, for the rest of your life and your family's lives and your offspring, I will take care of every financial need you ever have. It's not reasonable then, assuming this is accepted at face value, for you to ever worry about financial needs again, because you're taken care of by someone who has everything you can possibly need to be fulfilled of finances. This is a human being. What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created all things? What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who can say kun fayakun, be and it is, and change your entire situation? Allah al-Razzaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Alim, al-Basir. Allah can protect you from anything and everything, even if the entire world was turning against you. So when we know who Allah is, and we say Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, or Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illa alayhi tawakkaltu wa rabbul arshil azim, we realize what it actually means in terms of I'm handing over my affairs to Allah, the one who is taking care of the universe, the one who created everything. How can I still worry when Allah is taking care of my affairs? So the first step is really to know.
Takes time, right?
It definitely takes time, and it's not an overnight thing. It could, a
But
person's
Ramadan is
iman might
about to end,
increase.
Sheikh. Ramadan is about to end. I don't have time. I need to have tawakkul right away. What do we tell these people?
The believer is constantly developing the muscle. So of course, tonight, when you hear these lectures, these reminders, your iman inshallah will increase. Make dua and ask Allah for increased tawakkul. Ask Allah to make you amongst al-mutawakkilin. Inna Allah yuhibbul mutawakkilin. Ask Allah for His love so that you'll be amongst this category as well. And when you read an ayah that is about tawakkul or references tawakkul, if you must, especially in the nawafil, repeat it again and again and again. Sometimes repeating an ayah will help in terms of contemplation and really like driving home the lesson, the reflection there. And the second is, yes, Ramadan's coming to an end, but we don't worship only in Ramadan. So develop this muscle ongoing, inshallah, throughout your life, and you will find it building up. Knowing who Allah is, doing your part, basically do everything, do your best, leave the rest to Allah, never becoming prideful or arrogant with your accomplishments, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted it for you, and then always assuming good of Allah. And these are things that, of course, as we said, they're developed over time. Keep reminding yourself, don't cut off access to the reminders. Sheikh, I'm sure you'll agree with me that every Ramadan, people feel like their iman increases, and then suddenly after Ramadan, there's a dip. And one of the factors that I believe helps to increase it is the knowledge, the reminders, because so much is happening and people are listening to more, reminders in their masajid when they go for Taraweeh, more than usual, more than throughout the year. And alhamdulillah, now that we have everything online, people are listening to these reminders. And they cut off, many times people cut off these reminders after Ramadan. So if you
No.
want these reminders to still benefit you throughout the year, continue accessing them, continue having close connection with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with dhikr, dua, and these types of virtual gatherings.
Jazakallah khair. Sheikhna, Sister Faryal, she's actually reminding us and reminding Sister Amy as well and everyone else about maybe a good resource, inshallah ta'ala, for people to learn from and increase, inshallah, their knowledge and also hopefully their tawakkul. She's reminding us that the Faith Essentials that is designed by our Al-Maghrib Institute, as you know, alhamdulillah, has various topics on there, and it's for non-Arabic speakers, obviously. It starts from the basic all the way up to. Can you tell us a little bit about this program?
Sure, absolutely. So Faith Essentials is a project of Al-Maghrib Institute. It's an online portal. You have access to a number of topics and classes, hundreds of hours of content, structured in a very beautiful, organized, easy to grasp way from A to Z, one topic at a time. And they're very short modules. For example, who is Allah? The names of Allah. When we talk about Aqidah, what do we believe in? Belief in the unseen, belief in the angels, the discussion on atheism. When we talk about Salah, the fiqh of prayer. So it's basically an online portal in a very structured way to help you go from A to Z, and it's at your own pace. So this is made for everyone. This is made for the Muslim, left and right, up and down, east and west, men and women, old and young. And alhamdulillah, it caters also to the English-speaking audience. That is the main target audience. And it's alhamdulillah been benefiting many people. There are, I think, thousands of people sign up for the portal every month. Alhamdulillah, they're benefiting from it. And it's a huge body. As one family, alhamdulillah, even in the Facebook groups and the social media groups, people are connecting with one another, discussing these modules with one another, asking questions to the instructors and receiving answers from different instructors, alhamdulillah. So it's a great place to start in terms of all of the foundations of the religion in one place online.
I'm sure that inshallah people will really benefit from that bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. So a question coming from one of the sisters also is asking, you know, when you lose somebody, specifically like wartime, for example, you lose people, and this is the time, unfortunately, a lot of people's lives, innocent lives, to be lost in wars and so on. Is it okay for people to say, I understand, like why they were lost? I understand. This is something we have no control over. It's in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I accept it. Would that be considered okay, or still considered bad even to think like that?
I don't understand. So when somebody is responding,
like, as I think they're saying that I don't understand why this is happening, but I'm going to accept it.
I see. That's the reality, that we don't understand. We don't see behind the scenes. We don't have knowledge of the unseen, but we know that, as they said, I accept it. And the acceptance is because we know that there's a greater reason for it. So it's in accordance with Allah's knowledge, Allah's wisdom, Allah's love, and so on and so forth.
Isn't that the same example that happened in the story of Musa alayhi salam and
Musa al-Khidr.
And when Al-Khidr was the reason, or at least was the cause of the death of that child, Musa alayhi salam, he couldn't understand it. He says, how did you kill an innocent child? He didn't do anything. And Al-Khidr told him, Alam aqul laka innaka lan tastati' ma'iya sabra. I'm telling you, you're not going to understand. You're not going to be patient with me. And that's when Musa had to accept. He said, you're right, I don't understand everything, so I have to accept it as is. So I think it's okay in that fashion. Should be fine, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala.
How are you going to be patient? This is to all of us, not just to Musa alayhi salam. How are we going to be patient if we don't have knowledge of the reality of things?
Sheikh, what's the relationship between istikhara and tawakkul?
Istikhara is a specific prayer. Istikhara is a specific act of worship with specific guidelines and rulings in terms of you pray the 2 rak'ahs, you make dua to Allah as you're making the decision. Now you're inclining towards the decision because you did your research, you did your istishara, you asked others for advice, and you prayed these 2 rak'ahs and you started the act itself. So let's say you're pursuing a particular field, or in most cases, I assume, Sheikh, it's the same for you and for like every imam around the world. Most people will ask about istikhara when it comes to marriage. So a person is now making the decision, right? They're making the decision, they prayed istikhara. So istikhara is the 2 rak'ahs. You're making dua to Allah. Oh Allah, if this is good for me, then let it work out, bless it, make it easy. And if not, then protect me from it, protect it from me, and make me happy with whatever you decree for me. So there is an element of tawakkul in the act of worship of salat al-istikhara, but istikhara is a very specific act of worship, whereas tawakkul is a trait, a way of life, a belief system.
Jazakallah khair. Muhammad is asking, Muhammad Kiswani is asking, first of all, he's made a joke. He's asking about what's the ruling on buying non-zabiha meat. But then he's just kidding. He's not gonna. He doesn't need an answer for this, because I know there's an unending debate. We'll never come to an end to it. But his question, he says, when you're faced by a challenge that you don't, but you don't know how to deal with, or know the work that you need to do, what would that be? Is that considered isti'ana or tawakkul? Or they just, how do you use these terms? Or are they considered interchangeable terms?
What was the last part of it? That you don't know what to do?
So he says you're faced with a challenge and you don't know how to deal with it, or what kind of work you need to do to improve it, or just change it, or whatever that is. So in this situation, would that be tawakkul or isti'ana?
So tawakkul is always there. I would say in that case, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ. If it's something you don't know how to solve yourself or how to resolve it on your own, ask the people of knowledge who might know better. Like you're dealing with
That's
a
part of
particular...
the tawakkul, right?
It's all part of tawakkul. So tawakkul
No.
is constantly there. It's constantly there. And then part of it is you're doing your research, you're doing your part. So there's asbab, you're taking by the means or the measures to accomplish, let's say, a solution for your problem. So
No.
find help, ask for help, look online, ask people who you know, experts, so on and so forth. But sitting back and doing nothing is not the complete act of tawakkul.
Someone is asking, saying, what do we do with negative people around you? And especially they talk about, maybe older parents or in-laws. So they reach that age, and no matter what you do, it's just never ending. So what do you do in this case with these negative, comments?
Depending on who it is, first of all, we can reflect back on the Prophet ﷺ as the greatest role model for all.
If I make maybe a tweak to the question, probably maybe I would say, this young person, man or woman, they put their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, I've done everything in my power. I studied for the exam.
That now you have to also be content, not just with the result, but being able to bear that others will also disagree, see your perspective, or not understand, even though you're practicing, let's say, tawakkul properly. And the second is maybe to also, depending on who it is, educate them or advise them indirectly, share lectures with them. Perhaps they'll better understand tawakkul as well. Maybe sharing a lecture or listening to it together or sharing an article might slightly soften their hearts, wallahu alam. And the third is making dua as well for the easing of their hearts and perhaps the change of their perspective. We cannot force people to change, but we can try our best with regards to helping them. But sometimes, and Sheikh, I would hope you would comment on this as well with regards to families and family relationships and dynamics. But sometimes that is a part of the test, that we're dealing with someone close to us or somebody who has a right upon us, and they're criticizing something that we know theologically or religiously is true or correct. And it ends up being part of the test that we're going through as human beings, very close to one another. وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. So we're trying to exemplify tawakkul with this as well.
When it comes also to parents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us, وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَنْ تُشْرِكَ بِمَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. If they strive and they struggle and they put all the effort and the energy to deviate you from worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make you deviate from the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. Don't obey them. And then Allah says after that, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, and keep good companionship with them. Now, some people don't understand this ayah very well, because it says this about the kuffar. So, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to be kind and nice to parents who are not Muslims, you're trying to be kind to them, they're not kind to you. Allah is commanding to be kind to them. What about parents who are already Muslims? Yes, they might be hard, they might be difficult, and it's not easy to deal with them, but it's all right, it's okay. You can do that, inshallah ta'ala, and it should be fine, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. And just like you said, sometimes it depends on the circumstances. It could be the question can be specific. So it's always recommended in these situations to ask someone who can help with that. So go to a counselor, family therapist, some elders of the community, anybody who can help with that, inshallah. Tabaraka wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make their life easy for them. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Somebody's asking, Sheikh, saying, in this COVID-19 situation, what is the best advice you can give on the subject of tawakkul?
Trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as many things have happened before us to so many human beings throughout history, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not unaware of what's happening now. So we put our trust in Him that there are so many positive implications of what's happening right now that we cannot see. And I wrote actually an article about the problem of suffering for Yaqeen Institute, and we do reference infectious diseases as well. I think people should reflect on this beautiful concept of irtibat, the idea that everything is intertwined in the universe. And one thing that affects one person can have many implications, like the story of Musa al-Khidr, one thing, like one boy. But something that affects the entire world can have countless, we cannot imagine, countless positive implications in just the next year, 5 years, 100 years, and even 1,000 years that we cannot identify today. So think positively of Allah's wisdom and interpret things based on Allah's description of Himself, not on your interpretation, meaning your wisdom or your knowledge of the world around you. So turn back to how Allah describes Himself. أحكم الحاكمين أرحم الراحمين وهو بكل شيء عليم.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Barakallah fiqh. Shaykhna, the last question I want to ask right now is Adam is asking a question, very important question. He goes, how do we distinguish between taking responsibility of our actions for everything that happens in our life because of our choices, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree and relying on Him? Like, if everything I have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how much of the outcome should I take responsibility of?
100% of what we do, meaning within our control, our free will, is also within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission, meaning what we still must prepare fully and do everything that we possibly can. If you did everything you possibly could and you made dua and your tawakkul was there and it's constantly there as a way of life, and things did not go your way, accept that what has happened has happened. Now you must assess how you're going to move forward. In terms of accountability, how long can we live in the past? Really, that's the question. Because if someone wants to move forward to the next, let's say, chapter of their life, how can they move on to the next chapter if they're stuck reading the last chapter? So accept that what has happened. Reflect on it only for lessons to be extracted so that we're not repeating our mistakes, but then move forward. So we accept responsibility as Adam and Hawa accepted responsibility. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. They accepted it and they moved forward. So we accept the past only in order to move forward for the present and the future. Allah.
Isn't accepting subhanahu responsibility also makes a person understanding tawakkul easier? Like I take responsibility of all my actions. It was my lack of preparation probably, or maybe over preparing for it, for example. Or maybe I prepared the wrong thing, or maybe I've done everything right. But then that's when the story of Musa alayhi salam, I don't understand the wisdom, but I trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's something good that's going to come out of it, right? So accepting responsibility it leads to a better tawakkul.
100%. And sometimes we hear this often. People identify that they were not actually trying their best. Like somebody says, you know what, next time I'm going to study harder for the exam. I messed around so much. I didn't put in effort. I skipped this and that. So perhaps when we take that first step in accepting responsibility, it will inshallah only lead to better things in the present and future, bi'idhnillah.
Inshallah, tabarak. Jazakumullah khair, Shaykhna, hafidhakumullah. It was a beautiful discussion on the subject of tawakkul. In the last maybe 30 seconds or so that we have, in this blessed night of the last night of Laylatul Qadr, and I apologize for all the brothers and sisters for unable to cover all your questions, but inshallah ta'ala you can find more resources on the subject. I want to ask Shaykhna to give us a closing statement or closing thought that you would recommend for people to do in this evening, inshallah ta'ala, in regard to the tawakkul ala Allah Azza wa Jal. What would it be?
Make dua and believe with conviction that your dua is accepted, because that's part of tawakkul. We've heard so many stories about brothers and sisters from all over the world, and many of us have experienced this. Your dua, one single dua, could change the course of your entire life. It could be the difference between day and night. Put your heart into this dua tonight and in the following nights and make that a way of life, because every dua you make with full conviction, it will be accepted in a way you cannot possibly imagine at the time. But ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba, worship Allah and pray to Him, supplicate to Him, believing in the acceptance of the dua. It is accepted. Put in the effort, trust in Allah, it is there.
Jazakallah khairan, barakallah feek. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless your family, and may Allah make you among those who witness that al-Qadr ya Rabbil Alameen, and those who are watching and listening with us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this blessed night to bring us the best in this world and the hereafter. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep you all safe, ya Rabbil Alameen. from this disease and this virus. And for those who are ill, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their shifa and quick recovery. We ask you, Ya Rabbil Alameen, on behalf of everybody who's watching and listening and they're worshipping, Ya Allah, we ask you to rid this world from the evil of this disease, removal of this virus. We ask you, Allah, in this moment that you send down the cure, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and remove this illness from this world. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khair, Shaykhna. May Allah protect you all jami'an. Thank you very much for being with us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.